Hello, this is Miss Rosalie, the IRC Youth Education Coordinator in New York City, and welcome to the module about the IRC Way and Forced Migration for IRC Youth Tutors 2020 to 2021. Take a moment to look at our agenda now. We will begin learning in this module with the IRC. Who are we here at the IRC? The International Rescue Committee responds to the world's worst humanitarian crises, helping people survive, rebuild their lives, and thrive. Founded in 1933 at the request of Albert Einstein, the IRC offers life-saving care and assistance to people who have been forced to flee their home due to war and disaster. The IRC works in over 40 countries globally to provide healthcare, infrastructure, learning, and economic support with special programs designed for women and children. Every year, the IRC resettles thousands of refugees in 26 cities across the United States. Check out the map of where the IRC works globally. And now, this map representing where our students in the IRC Youth Education Department in New York City are from, over 20 countries. This is a map of the United States representing IRC offices across the United States. Now we will discuss the IRC Way. The IRC Way is the IRC Code of Conduct, describing how we demonstrate our IRC core values of integrity, service, equality, and accountability. These values unite IRC staff around the world and keep our programs firmly directed toward the well-being of our clients while meeting the expectations of our donors as responsible stewards of their resources. Now, we will discuss ethical responsibilities that we have to IRC clients further. The ethical responsibilities that we have to IRC clients include the following: a commitment to clients' self-determination. This includes confidentiality of client information and safeguarding of children online. An ethical responsibility to provide trauma-informed care. This includes providing consistency, which leads to the sensation of predictability and safety for our clientele. We have an ethical responsibility to provide culturally competent programs and services. This includes meeting and upholding our dress code. For the purposes of FY21 fall remote online tutoring, the dress code is such that all straps on shirts are required to be greater than the width of 3 fingers, and also that your presentation in general does not represent any offensive or pejorative language visible on the screen. Another ethical responsibility that we have to clients is to provide linguistically supportive programming and services. This includes translation and interpretation. For more about linguistically supportive programming and services for multilingual learners, check out the Linguistically Supportive Teaching for Multilingual Learners IRC Youth Tutor Training module. Let's zoom in now to more guidelines regarding confidentiality of clients. Note that client case files are always kept secure. Do not release client case information. Do not share pictures of clients, especially on social media. Some of our clients have ongoing asylum pending cases, and sharing pictures of them or identifying information may jeopardize their case. Always be mindful when speaking about clients with friends and families. Use only approved IRC platforms for communication, adhering to all IRC policies and guidelines. And always ensure that you are upholding child protective safety guidelines as well. Read on to zoom further into our social media guidelines. The IRC's social media policy applies to all personnel. All personal web content of IRC employee, contractor, consultant, volunteer, interns, all IRC staff. IRC staff members are legally responsible for their comments and posts on and offline. IRC staff members should be aware that individuals can be held personally liable for any commentary deemed defamatory, obscene, or slanderous. Thank you for learning about the IRC way. Now, let's discuss forced migration. What is it? At the IRC, we define forced migration as falling into one of these three categories: conflict-induced displacement, which includes armed conflict, generalized violence, and persecution. This represents the largest group of our students at the IRC Youth Education Department in New York City. Development-induced displacement, meaning large-scale infrastructure development displacement, deforestation displacement, or mining displacement. Or disaster-induced displacement, which means natural disasters, environmental changes, climate change, and also human-made disasters. Here are two important definitions to be aware of as they represent the maturity of the immigration status of the students that we work with in the IRC Youth Education Department in New York City. The first is a UN refugee, or refugee. A refugee is a person who has fled his or her country because of a well-founded fear of persecution based on national origin, race, religion, membership in a social group, or political opinion. A refugee petitions for protection and status as a refugee from outside of the relocated country, in this case, the United States. An asylee, on the other hand, is a person who has already entered or is attempting to enter the United States in this case, and who fears persecution if sent back to his or her country. Asylees may come into the country through student, work, or tourist visas. While here, they might find that the situations in their homeland have changed and apply for asylum status. To recap some top-line Q&A, a refugee versus an asylee. What are the 5 categories of persecution that can warrant legal refugee or asylee status? Answer: race, religion, national origin, social group, or political opinion. Question: what is the main difference between the application processes for a refugee versus an asylee? Answer: a refugee applies while in their home country or secondary displaced country, while an asylee applies while already in their relocated country, in this case, while already inside the United States. Now, let us zoom in to learn more about the refugee admissions process. Take a moment to read and internalize the 9 steps on the refugee admissions process articulated on this slide. Notice the multiple players that are involved in the pre-screening process in the refugee admissions process. These include UNHCR, embassies, NGOs, resettlement agencies like the International Rescue Committee, resettlement support centers, Department of Homeland Security, intelligence agencies including the CIA and the FBI, and the International Organization for Migration. This process alone can take years to complete And if at any point there are any red flags at any stages of this process, the application is denied and may not be applied for again. This results in an increasingly and incredibly small number of refugees receiving refugee status after originally applying. Now, take a moment to read and internalize the steps involved in the refugee admissions process. Note that players involved in placement and resettlement include resettlement agencies like the International Rescue Committee, refugee processing centers, and international organizations for migration. Thank you for learning a little more about the refugee admissions process. Now, let us continue to discuss immigration statuses at the IRC in New York City. Which immigration statuses does the IRC serve? In the IRC's New York City Youth Education Department in particular, we serve students of all different immigration statuses. Some stati that our students represent are as follows: permanent resident, asylee, meaning that their asylum has been granted, asylum seeker, meaning that their asylum has not yet been granted, or that might be referred to as well as asylum pending, refugee, U.S. citizen, unaccompanied minor, undocumented, or a special immigrant visa, SIV. So should I ask a student what their immigration status is as an IRC youth tutor? No, not unless directed by program leadership for a specific reason. A student may share this information with you, and that's fine, but this will be done at their own volition and their self-determination. Now, let's check out the directions for our Check for Understanding for the learnings from this module. The directions are as follows. Complete this module and submit all associated tasks by October 1st. This has been Rosalie Arndt, Youth Education Coordinator in New York City for the IRC Way and Forced Migration for IRC Youth Tutors.